Marcus Chen tried not to stare at the crystalline structures that spiraled overhead as he followed his Zelthorian escort through the diplomatic reception hall. Zelthoria was unlike any human colony or alien world he had visited in his 8 years of diplomatic service. The entire planet seemed to be made of interlocking geometric patterns, refracting the binary star's light into cascades of color that shifted with each movement. "Ambassador Chen, please position yourself here," instructed Diplomat Tix, a towering Zelthorian whose faceted body gleamed with internal blue light. "The Council of Facets will formally acknowledge your presence shortly." Marcus nodded and stood on the indicated platform, feeling distinctly out of place. His standard-issue grey uniform absorbed the rainbow light rather than reflecting it, making him appear as a shadow among the brilliance. The assembled Zelthorian dignitaries maintained their distance, their crystalline bodies arranged in what he had been told was a formation of respectful observation. A subtle movement caught his eye, something small darting between the elaborate wall formations. Then another. Marcus maintained his diplomatic posture, but watched from the corner of his eye as tiny, prism-shaped beings peered at him from behind crystal columns. Zelthorian children, he realized. He had been briefed that juveniles would be kept separate from diplomatic functions, their education incomplete until they underwent the knowledge integration ceremony at 50 years of age. The formal reception droned on, with Elder Tix reciting the 700-year history of first contact between their species. Marcus maintained his attentive expression, while counting at least 12 small Zelthorians hiding around the chamber, their curiosity evidently stronger than their discipline. A sudden vibration shook the floor, minor by Earth standards, but enough to dislodge a young Zelthorian who had climbed too high on a decorative column. Without thinking, Marcus lunged from the platform, diving across the polished floor. He caught the falling child against his chest, tucking into a roll that absorbed the impact. The chamber fell silent. Marcus rose slowly, cradling a small, trembling crystalline being that glowed with pulses of surprised yellow light. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. The young Zelthorian's facets realigned, the glow shifting to a curious purple. "Your biological response time exceeds our calculations," the child replied in perfect but stilted English. "Why did you risk structural damage to your form for an unknown juvenile?" Before Marcus could answer, Elder Tix approached rapidly. "This is unprecedented. The juveniles were instructed to remain in the observation chambers. Where I come from, it's instinct to catch a falling child," Marcus explained, carefully setting the young Zelthorian down. "No harm done." Instead of retreating, the child remained beside Marcus. "I am Ixo. Your locomotion patterns differ substantially from our adults. Will you demonstrate?" Other small crystalline forms emerged from hiding places around the chamber, their bodies glowing with multicolored interest. The diplomatic tension that had filled the room moments before dissipated as Marcus found himself surrounded by curious alien children. "Perhaps," Elder Tix said with a tone Marcus couldn't quite interpret, "this unexpected interaction may prove more valuable than our planned exchange of historical records." By the end of what should have been a formal reception, Marcus sat cross-legged on the floor, demonstrating rock, paper, scissors to a circle of fascinated Zelthorian children, their elders watching with newfound interest in the unpredictable human in their midst. Marcus awoke with a start, his hand instinctively reaching for the bedside table to steady a water glass that had begun to vibrate. 3 weeks into his diplomatic mission, and his Earth-trained senses were picking up something the Zelthorians hadn't mentioned: subtle tremors. He dressed quickly and made his way to the small research station installed in his quarters. Standard protocol for all diplomatic missions included basic planetary monitoring, though most ambassadors ignored the equipment. Marcus, with his search and rescue background, had kept the habit of checking readings each morning. The seismograph showed a clear pattern of increasing harmonic disturbances deep within Zelthoria's crystalline core. Nothing dangerous yet, but the progression troubled him. Computer, compile 3-week seismic trends and overlay with solar radiation data from the binary system, he instructed. The resulting holographic display made his stomach tighten. The tremors corresponded perfectly with radiation spikes from the smaller of the binary stars. A chime at his door interrupted his analysis. He opened it to find young Ixo, the child he'd caught during the reception, hovering nervously in the corridor. "Observation hours do not begin for 22 minutes, Ixo said, facets glowing a hesitant green. "But my education cohort has questions about human recreational activities that data archives cannot answer." Marcus smiled. Since the reception, he'd become something of an attraction for the young Zelthorians, who found human behaviors fascinating. "Come in, but I need to ask you something first. Have the elders mentioned any concerns about planet-wide vibrations?" Ixel's glow dimmed. "Planetary harmonics are constant and unchanging. This is established knowledge." Marcus gestured to his displays. "According to these readings, they're not constant. They're increasing, and the pattern matches radiation surges from your smaller sun." Ixel studied the data, crystal fingers touching the holographic patterns. "This contradicts established parameters. I will summon Serix. She studies biological systems, but understands vibrational science." Within an hour, Marcus's quarters hosted Serix, a younger adult Zelthorian whose form contained traces of green crystal, marking her as a scientist, he'd learned. "These readings shouldn't be possible," Serix said after examining his data. "Our bodies evolved to detect harmful resonance patterns. We would know if the frequencies were within your perceptual range," Marcus finished. "But what if they're not? Humans evolved on a tectonically active planet. We might sense vibrations your species never needed to detect." Serix's inner light pulsed rapidly as she processed this. "We need more data. May I connect your equipment to our primary monitoring array?" Together, they spent hours integrating the systems, Marcus explaining Earth seismology principles, while Serix applied Zelthorian crystalline physics. The combined data revealed something horrifying. The binary stars are entering a phase alignment that occurs once every millennium. Serix explained, her light now pulsing a worried amber. The resulting radiation will create catastrophic resonance in our crystalline structures. This explains the historical ruins our archaeologists have discovered but never understood. "How long do we have?" Marcus asked. 19 days until the first major harmonics begin. 43 days until potential planetary fracturing. Serix's voice became clinically detached. "We must inform the Council of Facets immediately." The council chamber fell silent after their presentation. Elder Tix finally spoke, voice sharp as cut glass. "These conclusions are based on human measurement systems. Our histories record no such phenomena in 12,000 years of continuous civilization. Because the cycle is longer than your recorded history," Marcus insisted, "the evidence is clear. We need to begin evacuation planning immediately. Your emotional human responses cloud scientific judgment," another elder stated dismissively. "We will conduct our own analysis over the next 15 days. As they left the chamber, Serix's crystal form dimmed to a troubled blue. 15 days of deliberation leaves only 4 days to act, if you're right. Then we'll need to find more convincing evidence, Marcus said, already planning his next steps. Because I'm certain I am. A shattering sound like breaking glass echoed across the landscape as Marcus and Cyrix raced toward the council chamber. The first major crystal quake had struck 3 minor settlements on the eastern continent, exactly as their models had predicted. Now they must acknowledge the danger, Cyrix said, her crystalline form vibrating with what Marcus had learned to recognize as anxiety. They arrived to find the council already in emergency session, the chamber alive with Telthorians moving in precise, geometric patterns. Elder ticks approached them, internal lights pulsing with rapid calculations. Your predictions were accurate, Ambassador Chen. We have activated planetary emergency protocols. Relief washed over Marcus. Thank you. How can I help with evacuation coordination? Our protocols are precise and require no external input, Tizix responded. All knowledge repositories and historical archives are being transferred to orbital stations. Essential research and governmental functions will relocate to our moons. Something in the Elder's phrasing troubled Marcus. What about the population centers? The residential districts? Citizens will evacuate according to priority designations, another council member stated, approaching with a holographic display of the planet. Critical knowledge bearers first, followed by specialized artisans, then general adult population. Marcus studied the evacuation map, noticing a glaring omission. The central nursery complex isn't on your evacuation route. The council members exchanged looks, their crystal bodies resonating in silent communication. Finally, Elder Tix spoke. The nursery district contains no irreplaceable knowledge. Those juveniles have not yet undergone integration with the knowledge crystal. Their individual consciousness remains expendable. The words hit Marcus like physical blows. You're not evacuating the children. There are hundreds of them. 37 unintegrated juveniles, corrected Tix. Our ships must prioritize 12,000 years of accumulated knowledge and those who carry it. Marcus looked to Cyrix, hoping for support, but her expression was resigned. Cyrix, you can't agree with this. It is our way, she said quietly. The collective wisdom of our species must survive. Pre-integration juveniles can be replaced in time. Their children, Marcus insisted, his voice rising. They're the future of your species. You impose human values on a non-human civilization. Elder Tix said, not unkindly. Our continuation depends on our knowledge, not individual genetic material. This is why we store complete genetic sequences in our archives. Marcus struggled to contain his growing horror. When will the nursery district be hit by the resonance waves? Approximately 41 hours from now, Cyrix answered. It will be the epicenter of the fifth harmonic convergence. Marcus looked around the chamber, watching the precise evacuation preparations. No one showed any sign of distress about abandoning their young. Their crystalline faces reflected only mathematical calculation and logical prioritization. I understand if this conflicts with your human sensibilities, Elder Tix said. Your shuttle remains prepared if you wish to depart before the major disruptions begin. Marcus nodded numbly and left the chamber, his mind racing. Back in his quarters, he found a direct transmission from Earth Command waiting for his response. The message was clear: maintain diplomatic protocol. Do not interfere with Selthorian cultural practices. Return to orbital station immediately. Marcus stared at the message for a long moment. Then at the small trinkets the Selthorian children had gifted him over the past weeks. simple crystal formations they had grown themselves to show him how their bodies worked. He deleted the message without responding and began accessing his shuttle's technical specifications. Marcus had exactly 40 hours to devise a plan that violated every diplomatic protocol he had sworn to uphold. "Computer," he said quietly, "calculate life support requirements for transporting Telthorian juveniles." Marcus hunched over his shuttle's environmental controls, fingers flying across the interface as he reconfigured life support parameters. The cabin, designed to comfortably transport 6 humans, would need drastic modifications to support Telthorian physiology. Their crystalline bodies required different atmospheric composition, temperature, and pressure than human passengers. 20 children maximum, he muttered to himself, reviewing the calculations for the 3rd time. Maybe 22 if I pushed the system to its limits. That left 15 children behind. The math was unbending, cruel in its simplicity. A soft chime announced a visitor. Marcus quickly switched his display to diplomatic correspondence before opening the door. Syrinx stood in the corridor, her crystalline form dimmed to a muted blue. "May I enter, Ambassador Chen?" Marcus hesitated, then stepped aside. Syrinx moved into the room, her facets catching the light from his workstation. "You are planning to evacuate the nursery," she stated. Not a question. Marcus considered lying, then decided against it. "Yes." "Such action violates your diplomatic directives." "It does." "And yet you proceed." Syrinx tilted her crystalline head, studying him. "I have been analyzing human behavior since your arrival. This pattern of prioritizing juvenile welfare over self-preservation appears consistently in your species. It defies logical optimization." Marcus felt a flash of anger. "Those children will die without intervention. Does that mean nothing to your people?" "Their physical termination is regrettable," Syrinx replied, "but their experiences and knowledge have not yet been added to our collective consciousness. Their loss represents minimal impact to our civilization's continuity. So they're disposable because they haven't uploaded their memories yet." Marcus couldn't keep the bitterness from his voice. Syrinx was silent for a moment, internal lights pulsing in complex patterns. "I did not say I agree with this assessment. I merely explained it." Something in her tone made Marcus look closer. "Syrinx, why are you here?" "Your modification calculations are incorrect," she said, stepping to his console. "Telthorian juveniles require 1/3 the oxygen of adults. Your current configuration wastes resources." She accessed his terminal, crystal fingers dancing across the interface. "With these adjustments, your shuttle could transport 26 juveniles." Marcus stared at her. "You're helping me." "I am conducting a xenobiological experiment on human compassion," she replied, not meeting his eyes. "Nothing more." "That still leaves 11 children behind," Marcus said, returning to the problem at hand. "I have access to a secondary research vessel," Syrinx said quietly. "It can accommodate the remainder." Hope surged through Marcus. "You'd risk defying the Council." "I am merely relocating research subjects to ensure continued observation." Her inner light flickered with what might have been humor. "However, the timing of our departures must be precise. The 4th harmonic wave will disrupt launch capabilities after 36 hours. Marcus nodded, understanding the plan. "I'll take the first group, you take the second." "This decision will end your diplomatic career," Syrinx warned. Marcus looked at the crystal trinkets on his desk, gifts from children who trusted him simply because he had shown them kindness. "Some things matter more than careers," he replied. Together they worked through the night, finalizing calculations and plotting launch trajectories. As binary dawn broke across the crystalline landscape, Marcus received another priority transmission from Earth Command. Final warning. Return to orbital station immediately. Any interference with Stelthorian cultural practices will result in immediate termination of diplomatic status and potential criminal charges. Marcus deleted it without a second thought and continued his preparations. 34 hours remained until the nursery district would shatter like glass, and every minute counted. The nursery complex rose before them like a cathedral made of translucent crystal, its spires catching the binary star's light and fracturing it into countless rainbows. Marcus and Cerex approached wearing modified environmental suits designed to withstand the increasing radiation. The caretakers have been reassigned to knowledge preservation teams, Cerex whispered as they entered. Security protocols are minimal. Marcus nodded, feeling the subtle vibrations through his boots. The tremors were worsening by the hour. They found the children in the central atrium, 37 small crystalline forms arranged in steady formations. Young Ixal spotted them first, breaking formation to approach. Ambassador Chen, your presence is unexpected, Ixal said, facets glowing with surprise. Our instructors departed 6 hours ago with no replacement schedule. Marcus knelt to meet the child at eye level. Ixal, I need you to listen carefully. The planet is experiencing dangerous harmonic disruptions. We're here to evacuate you and the others to safety. Murmurs rippled through the gathered children, their bodies glowing with a mixture of colors Marcus had learned to recognize as confusion and fear. But the Council has issued no evacuation directive for our cohort, one child stated. Cerex stepped forward. The Council has overlooked your sector. As a biological researcher, I am exercising emergency protocols to preserve specimens. Her crystal face betrayed no emotion, but Marcus detected hesitation in her voice. We need to move quickly, Marcus added. Can you help organize everyone into 2 groups? To his surprise, the children required no further convincing. Within minutes, they had arranged themselves into precisely counted formations, the older juveniles helping the youngest. Their efficiency was both impressive and heartbreaking. Even facing abandonment, they maintained perfect Stelthorian order. The first group will leave with me, Marcus explained, conducting final checks on his modified environment suit. We can take 26 of you. The rest will go with Cerex on the second shuttle. A violent tremor suddenly shook the building, sending cracks racing across one of the ornate windows. Crystal fragments showered down, and Marcus instinctively threw himself over the nearest children, his suit taking the impact of the falling shards. The harmonic progression is accelerating, Cerex said, her voice tight with alarm. We must depart immediately. They hurried the first group through the corridors toward the landing pad where Marcus's shuttle waited. The children moved with perfect coordination, following his instructions without question. As they boarded, Marcus conducted a rapid head count. 26 small crystalline forms secured themselves into the modified restraints. I'll return for the second group as soon as these children are safe, Marcus told Cerex, who stood with the remaining 11 juveniles. Another, stronger tremor rocked the complex. A support pillar cracked with a sound like breaking ice. There is no time, Cerex replied, her internal lights pulsing with rapid calculations. The launch window for your shuttle closes in 12 minutes. My research vessel is on the secondary pad and requires 20 minutes of pre-launch procedures. Then change the procedures, Marcus insisted. Impossible. The crystalline fuel matrix must stabilize before ignition. Cerex's facets dimmed. You must go now. I will find another solution for us. Marcus looked at the children waiting in his shuttle, then at the 11 who remained with Cerex. The math was unforgiving. His shuttle couldn't handle more passengers without life support failure. I'll stay, he decided suddenly. Take my shuttle. Get these 26 to safety. I'll find another way out with the rest. That is irrational, Cerex protested. You lack knowledge of Selthorian emergency protocols. But I have search and rescue training, Marcus countered, already transferring control protocols to our crystal interface. I've evacuated people from worse situations. Go, Cerex. That's an order from the ranking Earth diplomat. Another violent tremor made the decision for them. As the nursery's western spire collapsed, Cerex reluctantly took command of Marcus's shuttle, leaving him with 11 Selthorian children in a building that was rapidly becoming their tomb. Marcus watched through the nursery's cracking windows as his shuttle rose into the sky. Cerex at the controls with 26 children safely aboard. Relief mingled with anxiety as he turned to the 11 remaining Selthorian children, their crystalline bodies glowing with fluctuating colors that betrayed their fear despite their composed exteriors. We need to find another way off this rock, he said, forcing confidence into his voice. Any ideas? Ixal stepped forward, facets pulsing with determination. The nursery complex was constructed over ancient foundations. Our history lessons mentioned maintenance tunnels beneath the primary structure. Tunnels that could lead us to another landing pad? Marcus asked, hope rising. Uncertain. Another child replied. The tunnel network is not included in our educational modules. Another violent tremor shook the building. A support beam crashed down meters from where they stood. We'll take our chances with the tunnels, Marcus decided. Where's the nearest access point? Ixal led them to a maintenance room where a crystalline panel in the floor revealed a dark shaft descending into the planet's depths. Marcus activated his suit's lighting system, illuminating a spiral staircase carved from the living crystal of the planet itself. Stay close, he instructed the children. Hold hands if you need to. They descended in single file, the staircase narrowing until it opened into a vast network of tunnels that glowed with bioluminescent crystal formations. The air was thick with mineral particles that would have been toxic to Marcus without his suit, but the children seemed to draw energy from it, their bodies brightening slightly. These tunnels are old, Marcus observed, examining markings on the walls. Any idea where they lead? The geometric patterns suggest pathways to ceremonial chambers, one of the older children offered. If we follow the increasing complexity, we may reach an ancient gathering place. Marcus nodded. And ancient gathering places might have evacuation facilities. Lead the way. They moved deeper into the labyrinth, the children instinctively forming a precise geometric formation that Marcus realized allowed them to navigate more efficiently. His suit sensors indicated rising radiation levels as the planet's crystalline core responded to the binary star's alignment. Without his environmental protection, he would already be experiencing radiation sickness. A massive tremor suddenly rocked the tunnel, more violent than any before. The ceiling collapsed behind them, cutting off their return path. Mineral dust filled the air, momentarily blinding Marcus until his suit filters compensated. Is everyone okay? He called out, counting the glowing forms in the darkness. 10 responses came back. Panic shot through him as he realized one was missing. Ixal, he shouted, scanning the rubble. A faint glow emanated from beneath a fallen crystal column. Marcus rushed forward, adrenaline surging as he heaved the heavy structure aside to reveal the small Selthorian, damaged but intact. "My locomotion crystal is fractured," Ixal said, voice wavering. "I cannot move efficiently." Without hesitation, Marcus detached a section of his suit's exoskeleton, a support strut that would compromise his own mobility but might save the child. "This should work as a splint," he said, carefully attaching it to Ixal's damaged leg. "I'll carry you if needed." As he worked, the other children gathered around a section of wall, their bodies humming in unison at a frequency that made Marcus's teeth vibrate. "Ambassador," one called out, "we have discovered something unusual. This wall section resonates at a different frequency than the surrounding structure." Marcus joined them, placing his gloved hand against the wall. "It's hollow behind here. Can you open it?" The children arranged themselves in a perfect geometric pattern, their bodies glowing brighter as they synchronized their resonant frequencies. The wall before them began to vibrate, then dissolve, revealing a hidden passage that none of them could have discovered alone. "Incredible," Marcus breathed, as light spilled from the chamber beyond. "Let's see where this leads." With Ixal cradled in his arms, Marcus and the children stepped through the opening into a vast chamber housing ancient machinery, unlike anything he had seen in the modern Selphorian city above. The ancient chamber stretched before them, a vast cathedral of crystal housing machinery that had lain dormant for millennia. At its center stood a massive hexagonal platform surrounded by control panels encrusted with mineral growth. "What is this place?" Marcus asked, setting Ixal down gently beside him. The children moved through the chamber with reverent curiosity, their crystalline bodies reflecting the ambient bioluminescence. "These symbols match pre-integration historical records," one of the older children observed. "This appears to be an emergency evacuation center from the Great Resonance period, approximately 8,000 years ago." Another child approached the central platform. "This resembles a mass transport pod designed to carry multiple individuals through emergency translocation." Hope surged through Marcus. "Can we activate it?" The children spread out across the chamber, instinctively organizing themselves to examine different components. Marcus marveled at their efficiency. Even in crisis, they worked with perfect geometric precision. "The mechanisms remain intact," Ixal reported from the main console, "but the power crystals have degraded beyond functionality." A violent tremor shook the chamber, more powerful than any before. Crystal shards rained from the ceiling. Marcus's suit sensors flashed warnings. Radiation levels were spiking dangerously as the planetary core destabilized. "How much power does it need?" he asked, an idea forming. "The translocation requires significant energy to penetrate the harmonic disruption," another child calculated. "Approximately equivalent to 3.2 megajoules." Marcus looked down at his environmental suit's power core, the only energy source available. Its readout showed 4.1 megajoules remaining, enough to power the transport, but the suit was the only thing protecting him from the lethal radiation and toxic atmosphere. He made his decision without hesitation. "I can power it using my suit's core," he explained, already accessing the internal compartment. "It should provide enough energy for a complete translocation." The children watched as he removed the glowing power module. "Ambassador Chen," Ixal said quietly, "your environmental protection will fail without power." "I know," Marcus replied, focusing on connecting the core to the ancient crystal interface. "But this transport can take all of you to safety. The calculations indicate the platform can accommodate 12 individuals of our size," one child stated. "You could accompany us." Marcus shook his head, wincing as his suit's systems began to fail. The toxic atmosphere immediately began irritating his exposed skin. The weight distribution would be wrong. It needs to be calibrated for Xelthorian mass and composition. He finished the connections, and the ancient platform hummed to life, crystalline components glowing with transferred energy. The children gathered on it as instructed, but Ixal remained beside Marcus. "Why?" Ixal asked simply. Marcus's skin was beginning to blister from radiation exposure, pain spreading across his body. His vision blurred, but he managed a smile. "Where I come from, we have a saying. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for another, even if those others aren't your own kind." "We do not have an equivalent concept," Ixal said, facets dimming with what Marcus now recognized as sadness. "Maybe you will now," Marcus replied, guiding Ixal onto the platform with the others. He activated the final sequence, fighting through increasing pain as radiation sickness took hold. The platform began to glow intensely, enveloping the children in protective resonance fields. "Tell Syrinx what happened here," Marcus instructed, his voice weakening. "Tell our humans protect children. All children. No matter what." The crystal pod encased the children completely as the transport sequence initiated. Through the translucent walls, their small faces watched him with an emotion no Xelthorian had likely experienced before: grief for another species. As the pod rose through an ancient shaft toward the surface, Marcus collapsed against the control panel. His consciousness began to fade, but he felt something unexpected. The entire chamber was resonating at a frequency that seemed to cradle his failing body, as if the planet itself acknowledged his sacrifice. His last thought before darkness claimed him was simple satisfaction. The children were safe. Consciousness returned to Marcus in waves of sensation unlike anything he had experienced before. First came awareness of light, not just visible light, but spectrums he had never perceived, washing through him rather than simply being seen. Then came sound, crystalline harmonics that carried meaning beyond mere audio. Finally came awareness of his own existence, somehow both familiar and profoundly changed. He opened his eyes to the sound of harmonic singing. 37 small Xelthorian children surrounded his recovery chamber, their crystalline bodies emitting tones that resonated with something inside his own form. Behind them stood Syrinx and members of the Council of Facets, watching him with what he somehow knew was intense scientific curiosity. "He awakens," Elder Tix announced, stepping forward. "The integration appears successful." Marcus tried to speak, finding his voice worked, but sounded different, richer with harmonic overtones. "I should be dead." "By all biological parameters, you were," Syrinx confirmed, approaching his bedside. "Your organic systems had failed beyond recovery when our rescue team located you." Confusion washed through Marcus. He looked down at his hands and froze in shock. His skin now contained a latticework of crystalline structures that shimmered beneath the surface. When he moved, light refracted through the patterns in ways that resembled Xelthorian biology. "What happened to me?" he whispered. "Something unprecedented," Elder Tidix replied. "When the children you saved reached safety, they refused integration procedures until rescue teams were dispatched to your location. Their collective insistence represented a behavioral anomaly we could not explain through existing models." Syrinx's facets glowed with what Marcus now recognized as excitement. "When we found you, your consciousness patterns still registered on our scanners, though your body was beyond repair. The Council made an unprecedented decision. We applied the sacred consciousness transference protocols to a non-Xelthorian," Elder Tix continued. "Your mind now resides in a hybrid form, part human biological material, part Xelthorian crystal matrix. It was unknown if such integration could succeed across species. Young Ixal stepped forward from the gathered children, crystal face catching the light. You sacrificed your existence for beings not of your kind. This concept required extensive evaluation. Marcus slowly sat up, feeling strange new sensations as crystalline structures throughout his body adjusted to movement. How long has it been? 3 months by your Earth calendar, Serix answered. The planetary crisis has passed. Selthoria suffered significant damage, but has begun self-repair processes. Our civilization continues. Because of you, another council member added, your actions have forced a fundamental reassessment of our species' priorities. Elder Tix gestured to the children. These 37 juveniles now form the first compassion cohort in our history. They will study and develop this concept you demonstrated, that individual sacrifice for others can strengthen rather than weaken a civilization. Marcus was still processing the implications when the chamber door opened. 3 humans in Earth Command uniforms entered, their expressions shifting from diplomatic formality to shock as they saw him. Ambassador Chen, the lead officer, managed. We were told you survived, but not about your condition. My condition is evolved, Marcus replied, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. And I believe we have important treaty revisions to discuss. 6 months later, Marcus stood before the combined assembly of human and Selthorian delegates. His hybrid form now moved with fluid grace, the crystalline elements having fully integrated with his remaining biological systems. The chamber fell silent as he approached the central podium. Today marks a new chapter in interspecies relations, he began. As the first human-Selthorian hybrid, I stand as living proof that our differences can become our greatest strengths. The Earth delegation watched in amazement as he continued in both human language and Selthorian harmonics simultaneously. The treaty being signed would exchange unprecedented technologies between the species, human creativity and adaptability for Selthorian longevity and environmental adaptability. As the ceremony concluded, Ixal, now his formal student, joined him at the observation window. Together they watched the binary sunset through eyes that could see every nuance of its spectral beauty. Was your sacrifice worth this outcome? Ixal asked with characteristic directness. Marcus smiled, the crystalline facets beneath his skin catching the light. Beyond measure, he answered simply, beyond measure.